So you said that 95% of the customers of the world are outside of America, and obviously we met you in Ghana, and obviously you were on uh, Obama's team, and now you're with the Chamber of Commerce, so you have a good perspective of businesses, black businesses in America, right? What do you think are some of the issues that let's talk about black businesses specifically when it comes to black businesses? Because I have a theory that a lot of black businesses start the wrong type of business, right? They're not scalable. They're not designed to reach international audience. They're more like mom and pop local um, situations where you just become an employee of just yourself, and that's difficult to scale. So looking at it from your view, what are some of the things that black businesses are doing wrong, and how can they improve to compete in this global economy that we're in now?
But you're right. The reality is most black-owned businesses are small. One, two, three employees. They're in services, professional services, and in that nature. I think part of the problem is that we've not been exposed to some of this knowledge, and it is that exposure, I think, that is extremely important. You think about the international marketplace where 95% of consumers are. Nobody ever taught me how to think about exporting and international trade. It was when after the day after inauguration of President Obama, I was one of the architects of his first campaign. We didn't have a commerce secretary, and I was asked to go hold down the fort at the United States Department of Commerce. And probably within 3-4 months, the international department approached me as the highest ranking official at the Department of Commerce and says, because you're the highest ranking political appointee from President Obama, you're going to have to lead this trade mission to India. Hell, I've never really been much out of the United States and continental. I'm not counting Bahamas and places like that. So that was my really first experience. And understanding and going to Mumbai and Chennai and New Delhi and places like that, and understanding even the idea of being exposed to trade and business in another country. And since then, I've been totally immersed in it. But my point in saying that, one of the barriers, or one of the ways, we just have to rethink how we do business. That means how we start businesses, follow the money, follow the opportunities. And again, I think foreign and exporting is a unique and new but valuable opportunity to our growth strategy. And and this one of the issues I got oftentimes with leaders. Whether it's I've heard you all talk about our political leaders. Folks don't come to our churches and communities talking about China and India and trade and exporting. And we have to change that and demand a conversation that brings more dialogue and knowledge and access and resources from all of these federal agencies. Good friend of mine, Rita Jo Lewis, is the first black woman chair of the Export-Import Bank. Most people in America don't even know what that is. Yeah. And so one of the goals that I have is like bridging this knowledge gap with the information that exists, and getting that information to our black-owned enterprise across the country. It's just a knowledge gap as well, because we know we don't have a lack of businesses, but we do have a lack of high-growth businesses that are competing in these industries that are not only shaping and changing America, but shaping and changing the world.
You spoke about the exposure piece, and I think that's vitally important, right? And the education comes with that, right? When you go to new places, you get to learn new things. So you spoke about India in China, but we met you in Africa. So I want to know your thoughts around the rising economies there, the workforce, the opportunities, right? When we're talking about import, export, we're talking about business development. What are your thoughts around Africa and maybe specifically in Ghana?
Listen, I think Africa, is the new economy of the world. We have a whole U.S. Africa Business Center at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that strategically focuses on countries across the continent of Africa. And, whether it's Ghana or Rwanda or other parts of Africa, it's just rich with opportunity. You mentioned workforce. I think one of the most fascinating things that we need to recognize is the average age across the continent is only 19 years of age. And when you think about the aging workforce in America, the workforce is shrinking. It's becoming younger. The workforce in other countries around the world is shrinking. We have to think about Africa and these young people as being the future of work. not just across the continent, but around the world. So I just think Africa is just rich with opportunity. And you're right, even in Ghana. I mean, I spent a lot of time meeting with some of the local entrepreneurs there. And one of the things I've learned is, again, it's not a lack of innovators and entrepreneurs, but it's capital. And a small amount of capital that we can get into the hands of some of those young innovators and entrepreneurs in Ghana is just invaluable. So we're working on that part, and that whole construct or ecosystem that I talked about, and getting more Black-owned businesses connected to corporate supply chain. That actually extends across the diaspora, and that is one of my priorities as well. How can we get those entrepreneurs in the continent doing business across the diaspora? And so, I think Africa is the future. I really believe that, and the data is clear. And I think we have to lean in on America policy, but as well as drive more American investment into Africa, and understand for us as entrepreneurs what the opportunities to export from Africa could mean to the United States and across the world.
If someone's inspired tonight watching you, what would be like the 5 best businesses to build in Ghana or on the continent of Africa for this year and this decade?
But I think it's just everything, man. Obviously the number one, if you look at, again, where investment, and that's one of the measures that I look at from the United States and other countries, energy. It's just huge. Africa has such a tremendous need for energy. You guys have been across the continent. I imagine it's not uncommon for you to lose power, at night, or and you cannot have business without sources of energy. So I think in energy, whether that's in solar or other types of energy, is wide open. I think in infrastructure is another area that's just rich with opportunity. I mean, you don't have to travel too far, from Accra, Ghana, or in other rural parts to know that, the roads and bridges and how we think of infrastructure to include the technology infrastructure is just wide open for investment and opportunity. Another area that, I think sometimes we sleep on is kind of demystifying the products that we can export from Africa, not only in terms of raw minerals and all of those kinds of things, but what about clothing? And I mean, I've been working with a sister from Africa on her shea butter exports. And it's just all kind of products like that. I laugh at myself because I got fascinated with this certain brand of cookie that's made in Africa that's more healthy than perhaps a lot of cookies. And I have a cookie addiction. But imagine if we can get a product like that in corporate supply chains. I don't know, it's not uncommon, obviously, when you're flying on an airplane, you always get that little Biscoff cookie. I'm trying to disrupt that. And you get just small things like that we just don't think about. The products that we can import from the continent of Africa and Ghana in particular, because that's where we all met. I just think it's rich, but you have to rethink. And then the last thing I want to say about Africa, and we have a whole road show called Advancing with Africa. Some of this is about demystifying and debunking our perception of Africa. And so we have a whole effort to try to demystify and debunk a lot of perceptions that we have about the continent. But you've been there. I mean, you saw it firsthand. I mean, Africa is just rich with economic opportunity, and we're going to lean in on it.
Yeah, I want to add to that too. I just feel like, because that's a common question. I feel like the best thing that people can do is go to any country. Well, like, let's say Ghana, go to Ghana just as a tourist and just make observations. I was just there, just making observations. As you said, the infrastructure, that's one of the things that I noticed. And a lot of times, most people will look at something as like, oh, the road is bad. But an entrepreneur look at it like that's an opportunity to start paving roads, right? Or like, they don't really have sidewalks. Okay, that's an opportunity for sidewalks. There's one thing that I noticed that I don't want to speak about publicly because I actually have an idea about this, but I just got to figure out. But I say that to say, I think that everybody should go if you're interested, because that's a question that you get, like, what business should I start? What business should I start? We met somebody that was telling us about a gentleman that started a porta potty business and made millions of dollars off of porta potties because there was no porta potties in Ghana at that time. And then all the construction sites, you need porta potties. who's thinking about that, right? Like this hard, it would be hard for somebody to tell you go to Africa and start a porta potty business. But if you're in the business and you go there and you realize that there's no porta potties, then you might say, this is a business that's worth starting. But there's so many, I think, things that are needed, right? That it's really up to you to kind of figure out what you're passionate about, what you have knowledge about, what you have relationships about. But the best way, like you said, just to demystify the situation is to actually get on the ground, talk to the locals, take a trip, ride, see what's going on, be observant. And then you as an intelligent person can kind of make your own decision.